going to try to run through the Tolino ecosystem. I've been with Tolino for about half a year now. I started as managing director in Munich at the 1st of December last year. Tried to get up to speed myself with the ecosystem. So please excuse me if I tell you something that you already know or things you know better, then let me know, please. Okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history, but don't worry, not too much of the Tolino system or Tolino ecosystem. Tell you something about the market position, and then especially about how we actually work together. I mean, how does this sort of complex structure of different book dealers that actually compete with each other until today, how does it work? How do we collaborate? And what about governance in this kind of structure? And I'll tell you a little bit about the technical infrastructure, especially about Rhedium and EPUB 3. And in the end, I'll give you a little bit of an outlook, especially for Tolino Media, what we're up to, and telling you a little bit about the Tolino Select subscription model and beyond. History of Tolino, I can, I think, very swiftly run through. We started in 2013, as I guess most of you or many, or probably all of you know already. Weltbild, Thalia, Hugendubel, and Bertelsmann der Club, which doesn't exist any longer, in collaboration with Telekom as technology partner. They started that. And I think, I was asked to give this presentation in order to answer the question of how can one competitor to Amazon actually be successful in a market like Germany. And I think the key to success is the sheer fact that those competitors, the big German book chains, actually joined forces rather than going for individual solutions, which they tried to. I could tell you a lot of anecdotes about how Hugendubel and Thalia and Weltbild all talked to everybody, to Kobo and Barnes & Noble, and tried to find the best solution until they realized, well, actually, we all talk to the same people. Why don't we join forces? And I think that was the best thing they could have done, really. And it's quite remarkable that they did so, because especially Hugendubel and Thalia, in the years prior to the launch of the first Tolino e-reader, were in really fierce competition in Germany, trying to grab as much sort of the market share as they could. Things have changed a little bit. Of course, they're still competitors, but under the Tolino umbrella, they work together very well. I don't think I need to go through all the different details. Since 2013, we launched a number of devices, as you know, on a very regular basis. The alliance has grown also beyond Germany. Belgium, Italy, Austria, Switzerland have sort of joined, or some of the dealers in these countries have joined the alliance. 2015, we had a big promotion campaign on sort of the German train system in the ICEs, which was very successful and very remarkable for a product like this. More dealers in Italy and Belgium joined. 2016, Tolino Vision for HD especially, and the Tolino app were launched. We continued to get a number of awards for our products. And in 2017, that was, of course, a very decisive year, because our technology partner changed from Telekom to Kobo, as you know, and I will tell you a bit more about this later on. And in the autumn, we launched Tolino Select, a subscription model, which I will also tell you a little bit more about later on. And finally, also in the autumn, we launched the Tolino Epos, the larger ebook reader, which is so that we now have a device that is more applicable to non-fiction books than all the other devices before. Our market position. We still have sort of 50-50 share in hardware and ebook content sales. But you can imagine that things are changing gradually. In the beginning, of course, in the first years, hardware sales was much bigger than content sales, and now content sales keeps growing and growing. And of course, because of the nature of ebook reader devices, the device sales, hardware sales, keeps slowing down, but it's still growing. And here, just some graphs for the ebook sales growth. As you can see, still in 2017, we were growing, and by the looks of our figures for the first month in 2018, we're still growing. And actually, Amazon, they claim they're still growing as well. So therefore, we don't quite understand the official figures for the ebook market or market share and sales development in Germany. When you believe sort of the official figures, ebook sales is well stagnating or probably even going backwards. I'm not quite sure what these figures are based on. Anyway, the official figures show that we have a market share in hardware sales for 2017 of almost 30%, compared to Amazon Kindle sales of more than 50%, almost 55%. However, when you look at ebook sales, content sales, we have a market share of 40% according to these figures, and compared to Amazon Kindle's 50%. So content-wise, the picture is looking much better for us, and I think the reason is that we also sell content sort of onto other devices than Tolino hardware devices, as you can see here. And that gives us, from a global perspective, a unique market position really against Amazon Kindle, because I believe that there's no other country where any other player has such a big market share compared to Amazon. Well, in Germany alone, we've got about 2,000 points of sale, shops where you can buy Tolino e-readers, not at least thanks to our collaboration with Libri, which have, you know, the biggest German book wholesaler that joined the alliance a number of years ago already, and they sort of represent about 1,300 individual shops, independent bookshops, so that basically or theoretically you could buy a Tolino e-reader in any German bookshop, and or the other way around, any bookshop, as long as they have Libri as their wholesaler, can sell Tolino e-readers. So that's one of the sort of facts why we claim that we are an open ecosystem. And as you can see, that's just some examples of point of sales and marketing materials. The Tolino brand is very well displayed, very well represented in all those bookshops, especially, of course, in the biggest shops. I think another reason why, or one of the reasons why this collaboration between these competing booksellers actually works is the fact that there are sort of different regional footprints. So you can, I mean, Thalia, Weltbild, Hugendubel, they are still the core members of the alliance. Of course, Thalia is pretty much everywhere around the country, but Hugendubel, as you can see the red dots here in Munich or some other cities, you can only see red dots, or in a city like Berlin. You know, Berlin is big enough to cater for two big book chains. They have their sort of local dominance in certain areas of the country and certain cities, whilst the two book chains, Mayersche and Osiander, they have regional footprints in the west and here in the south west of Germany. And so in a way, though they still compete, or we all sort of compete with each other, we also have our strongholds in different cities, or the book dealers have their strongholds in different cities. And I think that actually helps. Right, but how does the collaboration actually work? You know, how do we work together? We tried to. The colors are not very well represented, but never mind. We tried to come up with an orga chart ourselves for this sort of complex beast, and we came up with sort of 2 different levels. Oops, sorry. The top here, the sort of the governance and the management level is a level where actually the individual book dealers view different perspectives, also different interests are voiced, and within the steering board and on the level below the Tolino management team level, they have to come to agreements, and once they've come to agreements, you know, things go down onto the operating level, and on that level we have like a one company approach. We really try to work together as if we were all part of one company, and I think that's very important. So we do have the different views which are voiced, but at the same time, from a certain point onwards, once sort of main parameters are agreed on, things get executed, and actually executed pretty well. So sometimes we do wonder how on earth we can actually make any progress, but we make progress. And of course, as you can imagine, sometimes it's a pain in the neck with this complex structure, with people not only working from different places, but working for different companies, having their different priorities, etc., etc. But then I'm sure that's very similar to the situation at Random House or Holzbrink or any other bigger publishing group. Still, even a bit more complex maybe, but at the same time, as we'll see later on, we make progress. We have a very busy roadmap full of a lot of projects for this year alone, and things get moved forward, and that's mainly thanks to the teams on that level. The Spocks, nothing to do with Star Trek. There's a single point of contact for the various topics, key topics, and so we have people with ownership. We have people that are actually responsible for certain areas. We have these 3 leads: and technology lead, product lead, and marketing lead, and in those sort of silos, we have these different teams, always led by one Spock, which is either somebody from one of the book chains or somebody from Kobo. And in the middle, I mean, Thalia, Weltbild, Hugendubel, they are still the core alliance members, and they are also the shareholders of Tolino Media. Tolino Media, I will come back to sort of what the role of Tolino Media actually is. Tolino Media is the only entity with the name Tolino in it. The rest of the Tolino Alliance is like a virtual company, if you want. And when it comes to the actual sort of execution of projects, we always have this sort of tandem approach. That somebody from Kobo, from a sort of techie side, and a representative from one of the book dealers, they work hand in hand to move things forward. So we always have the book dealer's perspective and the technical expertise coming together. And for Tolino Select, since this is more or less of a technical issue, also, of course, there are also technical issues about how do you actually report on subscriptions, how do you make subscriptions available, etc. But it's much more sort of content-led. Therefore, Tolino Media, we have are much more involved with that, and so we have somebody from the book dealer side, somebody from Tolino Media, and somebody from Kobo involved with that, and I'm sort of mentoring that group because it's rather complex. Yeah, so what is actually Tolino Media's role? It's quite easy, really. We are the content aggregator for the Tolino Alliance. Basically, we buy content, we make contracts with big publishers or aggregators, distributors, and of course with self-publishing publishers. We have our own self-publishing platform as well. And we get this content and make it available for the Alliance members. But we do that in very close liaison with Kobo, because ultimately, it's as you can imagine, it's again a technical issue of making ebooks available in the right form and having the right metadata, etc., etc. And we have altogether about 5 people, both on Tolino Media and Kobo together, which are solely focused on sort of content issues, making sure that the correct metadata is saved in the database, and publishers provide us with the right kind of data, with the right kind of files, etc., etc. pp. Brings us to the technical questions, our technical infrastructure. As I said, we've got an open ecosystem, and the fact that the transition from Telecom to Kobo last year went so well, so smoothly, was, I think, mostly thanks to 2 facts. First of all, the same people who used to work for Telecom now work for the Kobo team in Darmstadt. That, of course, helps a lot. And Kobo's actually, for the Tolino system, they still use the Telecom systems. There was, of course, some debate about this and the idea to sort of implement the Kobo system or to switch to the Kobo system. But for various reasons, it was decided that it was better, actually, at least for the time being, to stick with the Telecom systems. But as you can imagine, over time, I think the 2 ecosystem will sort of gradually sort of merge, and we will benefit more and more from synergy effects. But at the same time, I think there, at least for the time being, we would foresee that there are still 2 different ecosystems, because I think the philosophy is different for Kobo Global and then the Tolino ecosystem in Germany. Kobo Global, they apply a system whereby they provide local partners in France, for instance, with white label shops. For Fnac, they basically use the same kind of shop system and technical infrastructure as a partner, I don't know, in Sweden or in Canada itself. Whilst for Tolino, we have different applications, or different slightly adapted and customized shop systems. For instance, with Libri, since they represent those 1,300 independent book dealers, it's always a bit different for them. I don't know whether you actually use a Tolino, have a Tolino, or have at least tried it once. When you buy Tolino at a Thalia shop, for instance, of course, then this device is branded by Thalia, and you're automatically sort of linked, your account is linked to Thalia. If you go onto my Tolino website, for instance, you have to decide which shop you want to go to in order to buy a Tolino, which, to be fair, puts some people off, but in the current Tolino world, it's the only way it works. With Libri, you have the second step. You need to, the device is not only sort of linked to Libri as one of the Tolino partners, but then linked to one of their specific shops. Just to give you this one example, what the Kobo team in Darmstadt has to follow through in order to make this possible. And of course, Weltbild, they have a very different requirements compared to Thalia and Hugendubel, because they are much more online focused and still sort of mail order focused. So both from a technology point of view, but also from a business point of view, we are sort of a much more open system than Kobo, I would say. And as I mentioned before, we constantly improve the system. We constantly work on further developments. This year alone, we've got this very long list of topics we want to get done in order to improve both customers, readers, but also distributors or publishers' experience with the Tolino. So, Rhedium and EPUB 3, I know that you're very interested in this, and I know that you all know much more about these topics than I do. Basically, our standpoint is that we want to be as open as possible, and that our aim is really to use open standards wherever possible. So, for instance, with Rhedium, is to become the default rendering engine for us. It's already installed on e-readers and will be sort of available on the app by the end of the year, or it's going to at least. But it's not sort of automatically activated yet, but it's only activated when once we've got approval by a certain publisher for certain titles. Sometimes it can be just on a title-by-title basis. And at the moment we're working on sort of getting more and more publishers on board. Up to a certain point, I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but at a certain point we're going to switch this from a whitelisting to a blacklisting. We're going to say Rhedium is the standard. So dear publisher, if you don't want Rhedium, let us know, because otherwise we're going to use Rhedium, and your content has to work with Rhedium. Likewise, with the EPUB 3 standard, I know that people complain that EPUB 3 doesn't work on Tolino readers, and yes, we have various issues around that topic. But I think that's generally speaking, it's not that our e-readers can't make use of the EPUB 3 standard, but we can't make use, of course, of enhanced features, which simply don't work on an e-ink device like audio or video. At least video will certainly never work. And we've also got the challenge, especially with older generations. I mean, people still use devices that are 7 years old now, or 6 years. Again, that's in the nature of the beast. We all have smartphones that are probably not older than 1 or 2 years. With an e-reader, you can perfectly well use it for 5 or 6 years without sort of damaging your user experience. It's a shame, but that's a fact. So to make it possible that any new standard works on all those different devices on all different generations is a real challenge for us. But we're working on that, and like with Rhedium as a rendering engine, we aim at enabling basically as many features as possible on any sort of given device or any given channel, like apps and web reader, etc., so that people don't realize when they, for instance, read a certain book on their e-reader device, a video wouldn't be played, of course, but if they swap to the web reader, suddenly they could watch the video. That's how it should work. Well, we are still a bit away from that scenario. And likewise with the Rhedium LCP, that should become, or that will definitely become our preferred copy protection solution, and I think we will hear more about this tomorrow in the tomorrow afternoon session. And our basic standpoint is that we will anyway only want to apply a rigid DRM wherever it's absolutely necessary, well, because either the publisher insists on using that or applying that, or for subscriptions or certain audio materials, etc., we will definitely need a sort of hard DRM. But if it's not absolutely necessary, we don't want to apply it. But if we apply it, then it should be Redium LCP rather than Adobe, basically. Right. But of course, the Tolino ecosystem or the Tolino sort of the reading experience is not only about technology. It's not only about standards which users actually don't realize that they exist, or they couldn't care less about whether we apply Redium or Adobe. To be honest, unless especially Adobe in the past gives people a bad experience, then they do care, of course. What we want to do within the Tolino ecosystem, and actually want to do more of in the future, is to give people a much better reading and buying experience, and actually support both the reader and the author in their specific interests and with what they really want. The reader wants to read the next book, and the author wants, of course, or the publisher wants their books to be displayed well. And how do you achieve a good visibility, especially in a digital world? As we know, with thousands and thousands or millions and millions of books, it's very hard to find the right book at the right point. Once you've finished your last crime story, you want to read something, but you've already read all stories by UNESCO or whoever. So what's next? I think that's the key challenge, and that goes far beyond the standards that we talked about earlier. And one solution or one answer, of course, to that challenge is, of course, get your metadata right. And that's one of the areas that we are working on at the moment in order to get better metadata for series, and a better display of titles that belong to certain series. And when you think of series that are actually sort of numbered through, that's quite easy. But very often publishers have something that's between like a series and an imprint, and people know about that, but it's hard to grab in the metadata. It's very often not actually conveyed that a certain title belongs to that sort of kind of series, and so that people start looking around, browsing around until they actually find another title of that series. It's just one example. So get your metadata right, absolutely important, but we believe that we need to do more. And that goes back actually to what we've always done as book dealers is about selling books, and it's about sort of giving people or putting books, into people's face, saying, "Hey, you should read this, you should read that," and it goes beyond automatic. Machine automated recommendations. It's about curating. I mean, that's basically our job. So we started with that subscription model, Tolino Select, which is not a flat rate, it's not all you can read approach, but a curated model whereby we curate this pre-selection of 40 titles, 10 each from four different genres. I think it's gonna evolve, and we will add further genres. So far it's crime, thriller, novels and tales, fantasy and science fiction, romance and erotic, and of course people have already asked for children's books or young adult books. That's certainly something, and non-fiction. And customers can choose up to 4 titles per month, and they don't need sort of to read as long as they have sort of downloaded the titles. They can read them later as long as they have the subscription running, and the subscription costs approximately €9.90, which is sort of the typical price for a subscription. And of course, many people say, "Oh, but people get far less than with flat rate offers." But then people, let's face it, don't read 10 or 20 or 100 books a month. Actually, we've got feedback from customer surveys that even 4 books are sort of too many. They would love to get 1 out of 40 offer. the Tolino Select subscription is very well, of course, marketed and presented on all channels. And the effect is that not only we're quite happy, not totally happy, but quite happy with the subscription sales, but we are very happy, and all the publishers that have joined us, for instance, the Holzbrink Group and Lübbe, they are very happy with the positive impact of the subscription on single download sales, because all the titles included in the model get a much better visibility through our marketing, but also through a better ranking thanks to the lending transactions, and therefore we do see a significant growth. And just to finish off, what we try to do with the Tolino Select in the future with other marketing products or retail products like that is to replicate what's always been happening in bookshops, which is to to build a stage for books. And this is the fairly new shop of Hugendubel at the Marienplatz in Munich. They've reduced the space last year to 1/3 of its original space, but the actual turnover is still very close to the original turnover. Basically, they make much more out of the space because they showcase books much better, and ultimately we want also not only showcase books, but we want to showcase authors much more effectively in the future within our ecosystem than we've done so far. So we'll keep you posted on progress on that front, and that's it. Many thanks.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Great presentation. Do you have any projects regarding audiobooks going on?
Yes, I mean we already offer audiobooks, of course, through the app, at least on the with the Android app. You can read audiobooks, and there's a project going on at the moment to improve that app considerably. And we definitely want to put more emphasis on audiobooks.
One more question. So thank you, Hermann.
Thank you very much.